Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I actually want to take us back to before Thursday's question period, where we had conservative MP Rachel Thompson addressing the House in a little bit of a speech, as well as taking some questions and answering them. And this is how it started off.
A single climate target that has been set. In fact, when you look at the performance index, they've fallen to 62, number 62 in performance. In other words, there is nothing being accomplished for the planet, but there is everything being done to punish Canadians.
Now, you, just like myself, must probably be wondering, well, how is that even possible? How could Canada be so low on the list? Well, it's true. On Climate Change Performance Index, it says Canada falls 4 ranks and is now 62nd out of 67 on this index. And you can see right above me, we used to be 58, now we are 62. And if we actually go to the climate change rankings, we are all the way down here, 62. And when you hover over all of the different values, greenhouse gas emissions, we are very low on the overall rating. Renewable energy, very low. Energy use, very low. And our policy, very low. So this is extremely confusing because we are paying a carbon tax. Shouldn't we be fighting climate change? And, you know, these are the questions that Rachel is bringing up to the House saying, well, why are we paying this carbon tax if nothing is happening?
All of this has to do with this government's failed policies, and the carbon tax is at the center of it all. 70% of Canadians and 70% of premiers do not want the tax hike. 70%. Overwhelmingly, Canadians reject this government's policies. They do not want it. And so today, Conservatives are standing on the side of hardworking Canadians, and we are calling for a vote of non-confidence in this Liberal government so that Canadians can vote in a carbon tax election. They will have the opportunity to say what they want. They will have an opportunity to vote for the Canada that they believe should be. They will have an opportunity to defend their own well-being. That is what we are calling for in this place. We are calling for the restoration of affordability. We are calling for a vibrant future for hardworking Canadians because they deserve it. No more punishment from this corrupt Liberal government, but rather a vibrant future for the hardworking, innovative, creative Canadians that we know them to be. So with that, I invite all members in this place to consider the well-being of every single Canadian from coast to coast, and to spike the hike, act the tax, and give back hope to those who live here in this country.
Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this was the speech that Rachel gave prior to the question period on Thursday, which was also prior to the vote. Now, we already have the results of the vote, and the Liberal, NDP, Bloc, Green Party, and some independent members voted against this, which meant they didn't listen to vast majority of Canadians, their constituents, the premiers, nobody. They just thought about themselves. And as unfortunate as that is, this actually opens up a lot for the Conservatives because now the public see the true colors of all the other party members. They're only thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about Canadians, as majority of Canadians don't want any of this. And I think the Conservatives are just going to run with this for the next few weeks, and it's going to go vastly in their favor. But as this video continues, you're going to hear the Green Party kick in here about forest fires for a quick second.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And my honourable friend from Lethbridge, I want to set aside the comments on what has dominated in this place, carbon pricing, proper solutions to the climate crisis, and ask her if she doesn't agree that the well-being of every single Canadian, as she exhorted in her speech, includes that we face the fact that there's a very worrying fuel load across the country in our forests, that the forest fires of summer 2023 continued to burn underground and under the snow and are called zombie fires, that the oceans have hit temperature increases we've never seen before. And I ask her if she's also committed to finding climate solutions that work.
Which, hey, if wildfires are an issue, I understand that. But again, what is your climate change incentive or practice doing for that? Giving people a carbon tax is not changing the fact that that's happening. Also, there is a lot of cases where we've found out that arson was the reason for those wildfires, not climate change itself. Now, as this clip goes on, you're going to see another Conservative member bring up the fact that the Liberals and NDP always talk about the carbon tax and the rebate, yet points out we wouldn't be needing a rebate if you just let us keep the money that we already have without giving it to you for the tax to then just have it returned to us somehow more or equal amount. Like you're giving money to get the money back. It doesn't make sense.
The carbon tax isn't working, but you know what it is doing? It's punishing Canadians who are working hard, who are heating their homes, who are driving to work, and who are just trying to make ends meet. Shame on this government.
That's right.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Regina number 1.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the speech just delivered by my colleague from Lethbridge. The one question I would ask of her is, do Liberals not understand that the rebate, they're bending over backwards trying to explain the rebate they're giving to Canadians, is Canadians' money already? They would not have to give a rebate back to all Canadians if they wouldn't take the money in the first place. I do not understand how the Liberals and their NDP stooges don't understand that. If they wouldn't take the money out of the Canadians' pockets, they wouldn't have to bend over backwards with this rebate. And it is not revenue neutral, as the Parliamentary Budget Officer has said. They're keeping $2 billion of the carbon taxes they're collecting and using it on their pet projects. Why can't they just let Canadians keep the money they earned in the first place?
And he's right. These Liberal NDPs are a bunch of stooges right now. But the main thing that I want to get to is this Liberal member who, again, for some reason, they keep talking about Ukraine. And this is how he starts off his little spiel after Rachel Thompson sits down.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, it is true that inflation poses a challenge to Canadians. Food inflation poses a challenge to Canadians. But study after study, rigorous analysis after rigorous analysis by competent economists has shown that the contribution of the price on carbon pollution to food inflation is negligible. One figure that I read was that it contributes 0.15% to food inflation, that is, to the increase in the price of food. In fact, an interesting point was brought up at Environment Committee the other day by the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment, the member from Milton, when he said that many food bank operators are quite worried about what would happen if the price on carbon were repealed, because the impact would be such that those who come to the food banks would lose the Canada carbon rebate. So they're quite worried, and I haven't heard of any food bank operator, quite frankly, calling for the repeal of the price on carbon. Now, what is impacting food inflation? Something called the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine caused international energy prices to spike. It caused grain prices to spike because, Madam Speaker, you know what Ukraine is called? It's called the breadbasket of Europe. And the war has constrained its supply of grain, putting upward pressure on food prices. Now, why do the Conservatives never talk about that? I'll tell you why, Madam Speaker. They're very sheepish when it comes to Ukraine because they're ashamed. They're ashamed that they didn't support the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Act.
This guy really doesn't think there's any correlation between the carbon tax and grocery prices, when we've heard it from farmers. A few videos ago, we heard the farmer from Saskatchewan talk about how every acre that he has gone up from $1.85 to $7.10 per because of the carbon tax. We've heard transportation has increased pricing. I just don't get how he's saying that there's no correlation. But what I really don't get is this obsession with the Ukraine that our government seems to have. He's out there talking about how Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. Congratulations, who cares about that? If we take a look at our own country, Canada does far better in wheat production. We're number 6, and the Ukraine's number 9. And here you can even see which province produces the best. Almost 50% of our wheat comes from Saskatchewan alone. And this is from the Foreign Agricultural Service. Even if we look at another one, the World Population Review, which wheat production by country, Canada is still above the Ukraine. Now, sure, the war might have something to do with that, but our numbers have, for the past few years, 2020, we produced more than the Ukraine. 2021, they produced a little bit more than we did. And then 2022, again, we produced more than them. So I think Canada's fine with wheat and grain production because we can supply it to our own people. So for him to try to spin it and say that that's the reason that grain and food prices are going up is because of the war and we really need to support them is just crazy. And he loves harping on how the conservatives didn't vote on this free trade deal. I don't think Canadians care about that. Canadians aren't there saying, oh, woe is me. Why didn't conservatives vote for Ukraine in this trade deal? Yes, please give me the carbon tax. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. But they just seem to have some really weird obsession with Ukraine and always talking about how this is what Zelensky wanted. He wanted us to sign this deal. This is what he wants. Which to that I say, who cares? We should be thinking about what Canadians want, not what Zelensky wants. And 70 to 80% of Canadians don't want a carbon tax, yet you guys are refusing to listen to that even when the vote is requiring you to do that. But hey, this is just my opinion. Love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.